The opinions made in this video do not necessarily coincide with that of Imaginary Goddess, or anyone else for that matter. Viewer discretion is advised.
The Mercenary King here, here with a deck that's near and dear to my heart, a Megacolony. Megacolony is, well, it's what I made my name on, why I'm called the Mercenary King, among other things. It was the third, clan I ever played properly in a tournament. And ever since then I've been playing it on and off. I stopped around set 12. And then I've restarted, of course, as of set 15 because of the new stuff that's come in on here. Megacolony was a trailblazer in many regards. They're the first ones, besides Kagero, to really affect the opponent's field. At the same time, they didn't destroy it. They also had a whole bunch of other abilities involving stunning, keeping things from standing up. And then they went into things like machining Stag Beetle, which was the first real archetype that really went off of Vanguard. Everything else was based around the grade 3s and the clans. But Megacolony had 12k attackers and 10k boosters that were involved, and attackers from grade 1. Of course, these are weaker because they only lasted for a turn, but at the same time they had them. Some serious pluses and whatnot led to the fact that if they had continued with it as if it was like Nova Grapplers or something like that, they would have been way too overpowered. Like Link Joker is today, which isn't overpowered per se, but at the same time, the abilities went through it. They also had a solid Gen 2 ride chain, which kept them relevant, as well as Limit Breaker, easy 10k boosters, and solid columns if you knew what to play for, of course. With the new set 15, they really increased their versatility. Quintet Wall, a break ride, which is what they needed since set 10, before set 10, really. They still need a crossride, though, but things will come in time, I'm sure. Cyclomatus would be an excellent choice for a cross break ride. But let's talk about the deck. Originally, you had to run 4 heal, 4 draw, 8 crit, but now we're running 4 heal, 8, 12 crit. 12 crit is a super aggressive stance. Megacolony does conserve hand, though, by stunning. Well, it's called stunning, but keeping things from standing. For example, if you break ride a Cyclomatus, which keeps the Vanguard from standing for a turn, and they don't ride over the grade 3, all of a sudden you don't really have to pay anything for defense. That's plus 4 cards to hand for that turn, in the sense that they aren't spent. Because card advantage isn't spent, you don't have to run draws. I've actually decked myself out playing Megacolony against other decks, especially decks like Tsukiyomi. Of course, it didn't have the stopping power that it has now, but at the same time, with the 12 crit, with the tank plus 10Ks that can be given out, we really have something impressive here. So, my deck runs on the machining archetype. That's why I run these two, but then have these. I need the 8 crit, then there's no machining draw. I wouldn't run the draw, of course, if I had it. There's very few special counterblasts. Machining Spark Hercules is the only one, and I only run 2 of him for reasons. But at the same time, I like this heals art a bit better, and this crit's always useful. You can also run 12 stands with the 7k attacker, even though it's a grade 0. But I don't run it because I'm not a stand-oriented guy. I would make a stand deck, but I would not make it around machining, because there's some on-hit stuff that I can do. But machining on-hit is pretty good, actually. And I'll show you why. It's really this machining stuff is what Megacolony needed, hands down. And if they made more of this stuff like it, I will be so happy. But they can't, because they would have to start going into Link Joker's lock territory, in the sense of a lot more stuns, a lot of on-hit stuns. And I don't think they have the capability of really handling it in a balanced way. How do you restand in Megacolony is a good question. What does a cross break ride really bring to the table that the Legion or the or War Sickle does not? Starter is Megacolony Battler C. Counterblast 1, put in the soul. When this unit hits a Vanguard in the battle, this unit boosted. Put it in the soul for the cost, and keep something stunned. I run it because it's a 5K, and the machining starters don't work quite yet. The Megacolony Battler B, Megacolony Worker B, is into soul, something stands plus 3K. But at the same time, that doesn't work until War Sickle because there's not much use for it. Megacolony Worker A, Megacolony Worker Ant, Machining Worker Ant, excuse me, does work, but at the same time, it's still a 5K that's sort of sitting there uselessly now. And I'd rather have just a little bit of utility than risk not having anything at all. Machining does have a quintet wall, but I'm not using it. I still use perfect shields because there's no chance of failure, as well as it doesn't remove too many triggers from the deck. So let's talk about the machining we have here. I'm going to remove these. The quintet wall's fine. It's a ladybug. That's pretty kind of cool. Let's start with these two things. This is when this is placed on the Vanguard or Rearguard circle. If you have a Megacolony with machining in the card name in your soul, this unit gets plus 3K. So basically what you do is, let's say you have a choice between these two to ride. You ride this one, pull it back. You actually keep this one in hand, and then the next one you put it down for a 10K. With a few of the cards I have here, 12K attackers, and the tail 11K tail Joe, he turns anything into a 21K plus column. And that, of course, is numbers, and that will hit stuff. With Megacolony, you want to rush early and put that pressure on as fast as you can, but at the same time, you got to play it smart. Megacolony cannot be just auto-played. Megacolony must be thought out and strategic. I know what I can do as soon as I see my hand, when I should begin the pressure, as soon as I see my opening hand. These cards do double as boosters. I'm using my grade 2s, like in my state of play, I will talk about a Pale Moon deck. And that Pale Moon deck has a lot of utility in the grade 2s, but a lot of power and sort of deck field filling ability in the grade 1s. This is the opposite. There's ability in the grade 1s and power in the grade 2s. I've talked about these two, but this is the thing that really makes this deck work. It is the only reason this deck is able to work besides Cyclomatus. Machining Caucasus. When an attack hits a Vanguard that this unit boosted a unit called Machining in the name, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and it can't stand. It doesn't require a Megacolony Vanguard, but at the same time it only requires a Machining rearguard to boost. It's free. All the grade 2s that I would use, and many of the grade 3s, are Machining. This column works. Doesn't matter what. Really, you want to fill your back row with this, but you got to be careful, as this guy's only 6K, and if the opponent is smart and you can't tap everything for Tail Joe, it's still a 14K column. If you have Cyclomatus in the Vanguard, it's 15K, but at the same time, the on-hit pressure that you have will overcome it. The Japanese version was machining rearguard boosting and a machining Vanguard, but of course they buffed it to only requiring a machining rearguard to boost. So because I'm running two 12K attackers, this thing will do just fine. Really a staple in all machining decks. Even something with like 4 of him should still run 4 of him because of his utility and his super easy cost. My previous deck ran 15 grade 1s with 2 10K boosters, 1 Gloom Flyman, 4 Giraffas, 4 Perfect Shields, and I want to say, alright, and 3 to 4 Megacolony Battler bees. Not worker bees, battler bees. So I've got 8 machinings and 4 tail joes. The machinings are, when this unit is like this guy, these all came from comic collection. When this unit is placed on the Vanguard or Rearguard circle, if you've got something in soul, by the way, you should be putting this into the soul. He'll get plus 12K. So plus 12K, 22K, so on and so forth. you can really pump up the powers and the everything else like that. The fortunate thing in this is if it's wasted, throw it in front of you as a blocker, because if you have a chance to stun something and you can't, it's not really worth your effort to stun the front row, stun the back row, because they're more likely to not replace a booster than they are front row rear guard, which can be replaced by either a grade 2, grade 1 if it's a 10k attacker, or a grade 3. So of course, you throw it in front of it for a 10k block. I'm running a lot of 11Ks in here, but I do have a couple 10Ks, so you got to be careful. This guy's just a plain 12k attacker for when you have a machining Vanguard. Like I said before, this is sort of the prototype. This is the real deal. Megacolony is all about. It's sort of about that. You got prototypes, and then you got the real deal. Drafa was sort of a prototype, but Vector Zeus is the real deal. Same deal with Machining Martial Arts Mutant to Cyclomatus. Cyclomatus was an excellent prototype. I'm sorry, Machining Martial Arts Mutant Master Beetle is a great prototype. But Cyclomatus is a great ace. And of course Tailjoe. Tailjoe is 11k attacker with everything. All of your opponent's vanguards and rearguards are tapped. The Break Ride and Spark Hercules has a really easy way of tapping it that simply ensure that he goes off all the time. With this, 21k attacker, 18k attacker. With all my cards, I will hit 18k. The weakness of crossrides to Megacolony is now destroyed. It's fantastic. There's something about it really that makes me very happy indeed. I should have played this in Chicago, but I didn't want to pay the cost I knew I would have to pay. A Dragonic Overlord for a Cyclomatus. Still got the Dragonic Overlord though, and I got the Cyclomatuses. What's fantastic about these cards really is the fact that they are cheap, and it saves Counterblast. Nothing in this deck uses Counterblast before two grade 3s in particular, and this fellow who's really in there when you need that pressure. Like I said before, Megacolony is all about the long-term strategy. I know what my opponent will do. Part of the reason why I became even decent in Vanguard is because I sort of figured out how my opponents would play and what they would play by memorizing an immense amounts of information about the Cardfight decks and what strategies they would take. When I was in Springfield, what I did was I created a culture of fighting. Constantly training each other, constantly fighting each other. Brought a bit of drama, not going to lie, and certain things worked and certain things didn't. But at the same time, I created a place where people could be strong. And in that sort of environment, I became strong as well. Really, if you don't have a good shop, you should try to find one. If there's only one shop in the area, you should try and take it over. Not like, take it over like, I run the shop now, but like, be the responsible voice, be the strongest one there, but at the same time, know how to wield the fact that you are strong, not create resentment, but instead unite everyone. Card shops need some things to be great. They need a strong personality who provides a clear expectations of what the culture is. You need a lack of drama, or someone who can troubleshoot that drama. Finally, you need the ability to go in with other cities within your state. Chicago has enough card shops, and they apparently have a Cardfight Vanguard only card shop. Unfortunately, I don't have a flyer for that on me, otherwise I'd show you. But at the same time, this can really push forward what's your ideal version of a Vanguard society. And here's where it starts. It starts with taking a singular deck and making yourself immensely proficient in it, making yourself able to beat things like Sweep Command Dragon or Dragonic Descendant, Nebula Lord, so many different choices with this deck. And this was without Break Rides. This is without even card advantage. The things people would be like, oh, I wish I had a bit more card advantage, I was able to do without. And I'm sort of rambling here, but my point is that this is sort of the deck that in the hands of a master can make you a king or it'll just make you a copycat and weaker than a fly. Once you make a deck like this, constantly training over 1,000 fights, week after week after week, thinking about it, wondering about it, figuring out your strategy. What should I do if I meet a Tsukiyomi? What should I do if I meet a Vermilion? And I never really profited from it in the sense that I won great tournaments. In the sense I've been cowardly in not using this deck in the tournaments. Because I should have. There's one more chance and I might go to it, the last chance tournament in Chicago, but I don't know if I'm going to that. But what's my point here? My point is that this deck, even though it's modified, is the fully evolved and complete version of Megacolony right now. Eventually I'm going to replace these two guys with more sickles, but that's not going to happen until November. Now let's talk about the grade 3s. Grade 3s make or break the deck. You cannot make a deck just on good grade 2s. That era is long, long over. The only deck that can sort of do it, and that's not really because you run grade 3s. What we have here is 3 different cards. This is actually inspired by a Indonesian Vanguard player by the name of XXWow. I've taken my own stance on a couple things, and I have my own reasoning for a couple things, but working from his template, I've created this deck. SB. 4 Cyclomatices. Every Megacolony deck from now on must have 4 Cyclomatices. A Vector Zeus, Giraffa, Martial Arts Mutant Master Beetle. It is simply too good. It is the best break right in the game. It is free. It prevents all motion. It can counter Novell. No exaggeration. Why? Because when this unit is ridden by a Megacolony, that Vanguard gets plus 10,000. Tap all of your opponent's units, and they cannot stand until the end of the next stand phase. Until the next stand phase. In other words, let's say Novell uses his ability to kill all your rear guards. That's okay. Break Ride. All of a sudden, they only have 2 cards to Novell in their deck, in their hand. Let's say that you see 1 in the damage zone, so there's only 1 card left, because remember, you have to ride over a Novell. Sorry, you have to ride it from a grade 3, but you can't go from grade 4 to grade 3. Novell, of course, being the grade 4 of Kagero. The second in the game, first one that was actually tournament legal for a long period of time. And third one's coming out called Harmonix Messiah, which has an ability called Stride, which no one knows yet, except for Bushiroad. So let's say they ride to Novell. They discard a Novell to kill your field. Unless they've got one in hand, they've just misplayed. Sure, they've killed your field, and that's a tough call for Megacolony to repair. But at the same time, this guy can. He's field advantage. This guy can put on the pressure in the rearguard circle, and as well as boost you to crossride hitting numbers on the Vanguard circle. But basically, because he's stuck at that grade 4 and he cannot go down, and he just discarded a copy of his grade 4, this is where it comes into play. The same way with a lot of grade 3s. What I've done is often the opponent is at 3, I break right, tapping everything, then I attack his rear guard. So that he has to lose his break ride and minus himself if he wants to have the twin drive. Let's say he loses twin drive. I do it once or twice, not more than twice though, because then you start losing pressure on the Vanguard, and eventually he'll stop caring, and he might do something drastic. So you let it happen when you're good and ready. And so what happens when you're good and ready? You play either him or him. Both of them gain immense powers. He is field advantage, and he is Vanguard pressure. At the same time, let's talk about him. He's one of the earliest cards to really give a solid +2 for very little cost. At the same time, he blunts your pressure for a little bit. He is Machining Stag Beetle. When this unit is placed on the Vanguard circle, choose 2 Megacolony machinings from the soul, call them the separate rearguard circle that's tapped, and then he gains power according to that number. I've given him plus 16k, plus 22k, because I had 2 of these in the soul for some reason. The original power, by the way. So in other words, you summon out him, you summon out one of these, because you had to ride these for some reason. You shouldn't. You should ride the 12k and the 10k attackers because they'll come right out back. This is a 16k column, 26k, 36k, boosted by one of these. It can turn into 46k. That's a beautiful number. Let's say you do it like this instead. That is 48k, and that's even against crossrides almost certain to hit because they can't allow that sort of thing in Vanguard. I've literally seen people throw their entire hands before me in hopes to block it, but at the same time I just double crit right through it because I know, through battle experience when that sort of thing is coming up. And I didn't even have to do it. They were at 5. I could have just given it to my rear guards, but it's like, because I just felt I could win that way. And you got to rely on those feelings when you're playing this sort of deck, because a single misstep will lose you the game, because there's no room for failure, no room for mistakes. Let's see here. This is Machining Spark Hercules. He's the other ace of this deck. It's Limit Break 4, Counterblast 2 Machinings. It's a special Counterblast, but at the same time, I'm only running 1, 2, 3, 4, 12, 16, 20 cards that are non-machining. This card doesn't count because it never goes into the damage zone, because it never goes into the deck. Then this is, let's see here. This guy's ability, Limit Break 4, that I mentioned already, no. Oh, sorry, I was talking about the special counterblasts. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, pay the cost. If everything is tapped. By Blast 1 Machining, tap all of your opponent's rear guards, and this unit gets plus 2k. So in other words, he's 23k without a booster. With this, it's because you play it there the time you need it, it's 33k. 43k with Break Ride. But then again, you don't really need this ability, but you should if you need that power. This gets plus 10k in a critical and choose something, and it can't stand next turn. Unless your opponent is at 4 and he's looking like he's going to just let it hit and hope for not a critical, play this guy. You might ask yourself, there's already a lot of crits on the Vanguard, why not run stands? Because you've got so much power. Stands are unreliable. And stands only work on hits, not power. The reason why Hayaki Vogue's stand is fearsome is because everything is 31k. But at the same time, it's a lot less fearsome. I'm at 4, I'm going to let the Vanguard hit. And pray I have enough for the rear guards. So let's see an ideal field. Now there's a certain ideal ride scenario that you sort of have to follow, but at the same time doesn't hurt you if you don't. So let's start off. Let's say our hand's something like this, which I have received before. And then let's say I draw Stag. I already know what my winning image is. Ride this long enough, then ride him for a finisher. But here's my ride phase. Boom, boom. Let's say I take a couple damage, doesn't matter what it is. I draw a Tail Joe. Okay, I know what I'm going to do next. Boom, 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 boom. Why is it right here? Because this I'll be using for an interceptor. I attack and it's whatever, probably a critical because I run 12 crit. Power here, 17, boom, boom, boom. Don't use him until you have to. Because, sure, you sort of miss out on the chance sometimes, but at the same time, you don't want to minus yourself needlessly for a little bit of card advantage unless you can apply it like a Surgeon Scalpel. Like I said before, you really have to master Megacolony before you can even be considered good at it. And sort of figure out what the strategy is, how your opponent's going to attack, how you're going to guard. I just rushed my opponent. Let's say I attacked first the last time. I've done at least 4 damage to him. I'm sorry, at most 4 damage to him, maybe 5. That's pretty intense. I've also done it like this. Attack here, I get a critical, I put everything here. 17 crit 2, boom, and I can kill them. Because they're at a 7k Vanguard if they went first or they went second. Actually, if I went first, they don't have a 7k Vanguard. or they shouldn't anyway, unless they're really in a bad situation. So it's better to just sort of put everything here. But it all depends on what happens and how much damage you can do with it. Then of course I ride this, and I ride this as long as I need to until the time is right when I ride this. This of course has been intercepted some time ago. Boom, boom, boom. Sure, it's a turn, I can't use this column, but at the same time this is 26k, 36k, 41k to Vanguard. Most Vanguards are still 11k base defense, and it's really worthwhile to sort of figure out, you know, what sort of the odds are you going to fight. Right now, Legion brings it back down to 11k. There's only one Cross Legion that I recall, and that's a Big Bang Knuckle Duster Dragon. And even then, he is played quite a bit in the sense that a lot of people like brawlers, but he's the only one who really pulls it off. But at the same time, you sort of have to be careful in what you fight, what you play with brawlers, because something that works well in theory, you need to guarantee your Persona Blast. Very few Legions actually, in my opinion, have the stopping power it takes to win the game in a turn. Sing Saber Abyss, of course, does. Blaster Joker does, despite his discarding a card for a critical. Cards like, excuse me, I'm sorry, I can't remember. The Witch Legion doesn't. Yggdrasil sort of does, in the sense that it's a Glory or a Tom, I forget which. But at the same time, it doesn't work as well as they would like it to. Showed up for 1 or 2 tournaments, but of course the Japanese meta, who more or less only go for what's popular at the time, and what, you know, is the most vaunted, as they might call it, deck, Sing Saber Abyss. And then they just sort of run with it. And eventually Bushiroad said, hey look, you're only allowed to have 4 Blaster Darks in your deck. That's the only cross-clanning we can allow. And there's a damn good reason for it. So, to sum up, Megacolony got the support they needed from this set. They needed it longer ago, they needed it earlier, and they needed more. But with this, this is what I need to win, because this deck works with me more than any other deck that I've ever created. I worked off of a template of an Indonesian fellow by the name of XXWow, but at the same time, this is still battle tested. Not to the extent that it will be soon, not to the extent that I'll have it under Warsicle, but at the same time, this is more than I need to win my fights. Hopefully you'll see some videos of it, but some people just aren't. But sometimes that just isn't, you know, what happens. I'm really loving this deck, and it feels fantastic in my hands. I hope everyone finds this sort of deck that gives them the mastery they need to make themselves a power in the card fighting world. This is Ben Wheeler, the Mercenary King, signing out.